I'm reminded of my catechism noon sa Bible about pestilence. Peste itong, and this is actually pestilence. Yung so ganito yan. We treat the new strain just like how we treated the COVID-19. The only thing here is that we agreed that si Art naman, he knows his business. Fumigation ng cargo, ng luggage, kaya man siguro yan. Just a matter, spray lang naman yan. Fumigate nga para to make sure that because there are different theories. One is that it does not pose any danger about COVID sticking to inanimate things, to mga bagay. But there are some other scientists say that it's capable of transmission and it sticks in the mga inanimate things. So the best thing is just to address all problems at the same time. We will treat the new strain as if we are treating the COVID, the way we treated the COVID. And if it is toxic, virulent, as the doctora says, we will respond accordingly. And it might be something like a lockdown if things get worse. So it would depend on the severity of the contamination and the number of people that's being contaminated. Then we maybe meet again and talk about adding more in the protocol to safeguard the nation. Ang ano naman dito is really the people. Our job is to protect the people and the nation. And so we are here. Kung wala na kayong mga department secretaries, we would ask the medical experts whether what we are planning to do is sound and doable. If not, kindly tell us, educate us, so that we would know what to do, the proper thing to do. Kung may kulang man o may sumubra and it is not really needed, kindly tell us how we got it wrong so that we can be, I said, informed of the war on how to wage the war against the COVID-19 and the new strain. Ang takot ko lang baka mag-mutate na mutate every time that there's a vaccine, mag-mutate itong mga loko-loko na ito. Saan galing, I do not know. But as I said, catechism ko sa grade school, it's pestilence. Pinipiste lang itong po. So, we are here to ask for your help. So, anybody from the who would like to express, sir, kindly.
Mr. President, he is Dr. Camilo Roa.
Ayan na, ito. Okay. Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Uh, I'm a clinician. I'm a pulmonologist. So my sense is that going back to the circumstance of the discovery of the strain, that it was in UK, and UK was experiencing a spike. It so happened that UK has this extensive surveillance as well. I mean, 10% or more of the cases, nakita nila. What about in other countries where there are spikes and there is little surveillance? I understand sa US, 1% lang. Malalaman na merong mutant virus na either increasing in infectiousness or hopefully not increasing in severity ang disease niya, late na. So what I'm driving at, maybe the measures talked about earlier will not just be based on the reports of the strain identified, but also in the statistics of different countries where there is, by statistics, we have very good epidemiologists here, highly suspicious spike in either number of cases or deaths, and take the proactive measures until ma-prove yun, baka behavior lang o baka poor nutrition, na hindi yon dahil sa mutant. Kasi mutation will really occur whenever the virus is populating different cells and reproducing. That's natural. So in those cases, suspect, we do something about it para hindi huli na nakapunta na sa atin. In the same way, Mr. President, kung meron tayong barangay or city na biglang ganun, and that we have been doing actually, granular kaagad yung measures para ma-discover kung baka dahil lang sa behavior nga, o baka may nakalusot from UK or somewhere that we found a bit late. Thank you.
Salamat, Doktor. That is why there has to be a nakatutok lang dito. Nothing about entering or nakatutok lang ito sa mga countries, lahat, tinamaan ngayon eh. Magtutok tayo dito sa countries where we think that there is a spike. And especially dito sa atin. And we would know that. So, ang ano talaga dito is surveillance. The only way that we can be prepared, not avoid, we cannot avoid it, but be prepared to confront the new virus if we know in advance how it will progress in coming into our country. So we have to, about the only thing really that's good about this contagion now is that every country is telling, it's transparent, telling the truth. And even China admitted that the COVID-19 started from there. And itong new strain, of course, it's the first country who reported it was Britain. So, pag-aralan natin siya. So, may nakatutok talaga dyan. But I would suggest that we create a panel or who would just be, whose job would be only to observe the different progression and the identification of the new strain. Apparently, there is because Spain, ayan, first case nila. Saudi Arabia, mayroon sila, sinira na nila. All inbound are suspended. Tayo dito, we will meet again about today is 26. We will meet again on the 28 something. Sandali lang. We'll just, just try to figure out how we are doing and if our preparation is necessary. Because in between, by and large, hindi naman natin malaman kung bukas meron o wala. So we should meet on the, if you have the time, I would ask you to, kung kaya lang ninyo, 28 then after Christmas, about January 3. We will inform you. This is just a timeline, but exactly when pwede namang it could be moved or transferred to another date. Ang gusto kong malaman yung mga what's in the mind of the experts. Can we hear?
Mr. President, the OIC WHO country representative, Dr. Socorro Escalante, would like to manifest. Mr. President, may we recognize her? Okay.
Good evening, Mr. President, and thank you so much, Secretary Duque. First and foremost, Mr. President, we agree with the experts na nagsabi na po kanina that we are expecting the mutation of this virus. And because the more the virus will circulate, the more chances of mutation. And we agree that it's the same characteristics and attributes in terms of the mode of transmission, except as Secretary Duque has already said, we are still looking into other attributes such as the transmissibility or kung mas grabe po yung pagkaka-infect or yung pathogenicity ng virus. So considering that, Mr. President, the WHO recommendation for now is not to restrict travel, but to ensure that our public health interventions are in place and that the country is ready to mitigate any event that the transmissibility or this new strain will come into the country. But there are 3 points, Mr. President, that we want to add. Unang-una po, we want to encourage more thorough risk assessment of the situation. And risk assessment could really, especially in this circumstance, if we are going to meet again on the 28th, we will look at the data that is being submitted by the member states to the WHO through the International Health Regulation. And by this information, we will get the latest update from the different countries. And this risk mitigation, Mr. President, would include looking at what is the current stage of transmission of this specific variant in the country of origin of our passengers. For example po, if we are looking, for example, for Australia, Japan, and Singapore, although meron na pong the cases that have been detected and reported through the international health regulations, by this basis, we would not encourage like lockdowns or restrictions of travel because the numbers are low, and these are also the countries which have very stringent public health interventions. So kung malakas po yung public health intervention ng isang country and the cases are limited to imported cases at wala pa naman pong community transmission, it is not going to warrant the declaration of a lockdown from that country. On the other hand, the risk assessment would also be for the national risk assessment. We need to take this opportunity to look at saan ba yung gaps ng mitigating measures natin, including, for example, the points of entry, how we quarantine, and how we isolate the individuals, plus our own surveillance. In the past 9 months, Mr. President, we do observe that the government has already put all the necessary public health interventions and measures, but we have learned also a lot of lessons on the capacity of our local governments to really prepare to mitigate the risks when people are traveling abroad or from Manila to the provinces. And the biggest lessons that we have had is when individuals coming from places where there is ongoing community transmission or high level of transmission will go to places where wala pa tayong infection. So these individuals will seed those localities. And when the local government units or those areas are not ready for contact tracing, isolation, and quarantine, then lumalabas po at nakakalusot yung infection. So now, in this current situation, the risk that we are seeing, Mr. President, is the increased mobility of the population and what is happening in the UK, but that is only a part of the risk. The second part of the risk is how strong our public health intervention in this country will be able to cope up with this risk. So in the meantime, Mr. President, we would really encourage the country to add the measures on thorough risk assessment plus risk mitigation by ensuring the capacity of our public health systems in the country. Another point, Mr. President, is we would support the inclusion of genomics sequencing in our surveillance system because, as we said, this virus is going to mutate, and we do not know if there are already mutations also in our country that is actually causing faster transmission, or we do not know the attribute and nature of the virus that is already circulating. So WHO is in support of the National Institute of Health and the RITM on the move to strengthen the genomics sequencing in the country. Last point, Mr. President, regarding po yung Sabah, Malaysia. We have confirmed as of now from information within WHO that the variant that they have identified in Sabah is not the same as the variant in UK, but it's similar to other mutations that's located in South Africa, in Australia, and in Netherlands. So, and we do not yet know what is the significance of this mutation and what are the implications in terms of public health system. So again, Mr. President, to summarize the point that that we would like to deliver to the body. One, we expect virus mutations, and this is expected to happen. Number two, our public health interventions that are needed and are already proven to effective are in place. We just need to systematize and strengthen them. Number three, we need to ensure that we do thorough risk assessment, and that risk assessment is about the country of departure of the passengers plus the capacity of our health systems to handle the arrivals. And number four, is risk communication is very important. So thank you so much, Mr. President, and to the body, and WHO will continue to be part of these discussions and be part of the risk assessment, as well as to provide continued information as we gather from other countries.
Yes, you It's a very good narrative. Lalo na yung ano, I'd like to zero in on itong surveillance, pati yung the way how we, yung interdiction ng, it's not intervention, it's really interdiction, how the local governments would also help us. Alam mo, ang pag-asa talaga natin dito si Secretary Anyo. Because sa lahat na ito, it's aside from us here in Manila. Sa probinsya, it's always the mayor, municipal mayor, and the city health officer, plus the barangay captain. The most influential dyan sa barangay is really the barangay captain. And if the mayor, kanya-kanyang assessment, kanya-kanyang ano, without being yung sa Davao ngayon, ang mayor doon nag-curfew. The curfew was originally 7 o'clock. Then there were a lot of complaints. It's been moved to 9. But kung ganun sila zealousness, ang trabaho nila, the push of Secretary Anyo sa lahat, make them obligatory. Kasi itong mga barangay captain, actually, government has the perfect setup. You have the president, then you have the governors, then you have the city mayors, municipal mayors, then the different barangays. Alam mo, ang pinaka, ano dyan, is the mayor and the barangay captains. So, make it an obligation for them to really strictly follow also the whatever direction that we take in this fight against COVID. There has to be a unanimity rather in the modality, kasi pag hindi kanya-kanya o tamad-tamaran, so it behooves upon the Secretary of Health to also to move them to action. Walang magtamad-tamaran. Ganito na lang. If they are not at par, in parity with the rest of the nation, di palitan natin sila. In the meantime, we do not remove them from office. Palitan, just move aside. And maybe the vice mayor can do it. Ganun na lang ang gawin. That's my suggestion to Secretary Anyo. If they are not doing the very things that are important to in this fight, yung iba to take it as just an ordinary thing, they do not really, maybe they have not realized the seriousness. Then we can always move them. We do not remove them from office. You just step aside and assign the next thing, the persons who can do it, including the mayors. Makikita mo yan sa spike that you were talking about. Kung mag-spike ang isang barangay, then sa surveillance and sa investigation, we should be able to determine why. Bakit? Kasi yan, sa health authorities na yan, kay Secretary Duque yan. But push them hard, Secretary, and tell them that, well, we are live. I hope that this will be heard by everybody. talagang obligasyon ng mayor yan to protect public health. It's not, hindi yan, iyo talaga yan. Hindi mo pasa yan sa iba. That is your job. That is your function. So mayors must exert efforts na sa kanilang kanilang munisipyo at barangay is working. And they can push hard also the barangay captains. Yung mga barangay captains na hindi ito matrabaho and the surveillance in Manila would just notice that there is a spike in your barangay, then we will investigate why. No, so if others compared to the others, yours is in a worse situation, tell me why is it like that? Yung trabaho talaga ng gobyerno to eh. It's not the job of just anybody. It falls heavily on the shoulders of government. So yung struktura na yan, we have to make use of it because that is what is intended for in the first place. That structure there is part of the governance that the government has at least control over the events mangyari sa ating bayan. This time, lahat tayo. I said it behooves upon everybody who was with government to contribute. Dapat lang gawin ninyo, nakikinig kayo sa sinasabi ng yung surveillance talaga importante. And well, if there's a lot of people who are sick, then maybe the government, the national government would also contribute something to control the pandemic in your place. Anybody from, yes, sir, may I?
Mr. President, Dr. Ed Salvania was going to manifest, and then to be followed by Dr. Hepte.
Good evening, Mr. President. Good evening to everyone. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak. I think one thing that has to be clear, this is not the first time that we are seeing a variant come into the country. If we remember in June, when we had the surge of cases, there was actually a new variant that came from Europe, yung D614G. And this was actually worse. It was 3 to 9 times more infectious than the original virus po. And if you remember, we had about 6,000 cases at the peak of that surge. And so we know what happens when we get a variant in. But that was also at the same time that we went po from ECQ to GCQ. So we know how to deal with these variants po. And as Secretary Duque has already mentioned, the minimum health standards are the key, the implementation. And I think what we have now is actually some advanced information. Hindi kagaya nung dati na nakapasok na lang siya and RITM was able to detect it, but it was already here. So ngayon may advanced information tayo, so we are actually prepared so that we can preempt any kind of spike without resulting to drastic measures like lockdown. Hopefully hindi siya mag-spike that high. Now the other question is, will the vaccine still work on this variant? We do not know yet, but because the mutation is still relatively new and hindi pa ganun ka-mutated yung virus compared to other illnesses like for instance sa HIV or sa influenza, we expect that the vaccine will still work against this. But there is no guarantee that it will not continue to mutate and then the vaccine will start to lose efficacy. But that is not the end of the world because we can actually fix the vaccines as well. But that goes back to proper monitoring and surveillance so we know if the vaccine is already starting to lose efficacy so that we can preempt and we can add the strains to the vaccines para gumagana pa rin. So basically what I'm saying is this is not the first time we're facing a variant. We know how to deal with it. And also that surveillance is really key to making sure that our vaccines, once they get here, remain effective. But we know what works, and I think that we just have to make sure that we are doing the right public health interventions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, you said it right. What is important is we would know, or we should know, whether it would work or not. Any, I said, interdiction into this pandemic now going on, masiguro lang natin na yung ginagawa natin would be the correct one. It's important that it would reflect the situation that we are fighting for. Yes, Doctor.
Good evening.
We have Dr.
Yes.
Troy Hepte, Mr. President.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. President.
Yes.
Susundan ko lang po yung nasabi rin ni Dr. Edsel at ni Dr. Escalante. This is with regards po yung dun sa suggestion nyo na magkaroon tayo ng separate task force or maybe a technical working group to look at the situation as it is. Kasi nagde-develop po yung nangyayari and I think as Dr. Escalante of WHO mentioned, a proper risk assessment will be very helpful for us to understand kung ano po yung characteristics nitong new variant nito, how it appears, and in the contribution of other member states or countries of WHO, they can help us come up with a good picture of what is happening. With regards po dun sa surveillance natin, I think we need to also acknowledge po that we have a lot of success in our systems development for surveillance for diseases, contact tracing, yung pagsiset up po ng mga laboratories, health facilities. And I think ang important po, aside from looking at where the diseases are o yung mga spikes or clusters, natutuntun din po natin kung saan po medyo may kahinaan dun sa ating system. Varied po kasi yung ating mga LGUs. Some are performing better than others, but some are not that organized or kulang po sa capacity. And I think we should really be able to have that kind of granularity also to look at yung system's performance natin down to the local level. And I believe that DOH and DILG has that very close relationship so that we can inform them of what the probable gaps are in the surveillance system. And crucial po kasi kung mag-iisip tayo dun sa timing, pag kinulang tayo ng, or kinahuli tayo ng konti, baka dumami yung kaso. And very crucial po yung capacity building natin for surveillance. And nakasalali po yan dun sa office ng DOH Epidemiology Bureau and all of their network dun sa epidemiology and surveillance units all over the country. So I think how we try to get that system and study it and how we can further add to its strengthening and improvement, all the better po for us to prepare ourselves for this threat of this new variant. It won't be the first and last time po. And I think there will be other opportunities for us to learn kung paano natin mapapaigting pa yung ating mga measures against this particular threat of possible mutations in the future. Yun lang po, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Wala namang problema sa ano because si General Lorenzana, General Anio, pati si General Galvez are listening. So we would rely on their power, brain to come up with the responses if it comes. But let me revisit itong vaccine. I remember distinctly dito sa body that I said, itong vaccine, ang pagbili, ang pag to select and to bawat to buy, binigay ko yan kay General Galvez. Solely kanya, sabi ko. Idiyo yan lahat trabaho. Then there comes this raucous about a vaccine already about to be maniwala kanya sa Amerikano na yan. So do not. So merong ano na delivery and the thing was spoiled by Secretary Duque. Tignan mo lang ang ano ang tignan mo laro dito sa gobyerno na to. I place it in the hands of General Galvez. Iyo lahat yan. Pagka nakabulyaso yan, ikaw ang ditirahin namin. Iyo yan. Well, of course, the policy would be made by General Lorenzana and General Anyo. Itong, ano, sila yan. If it fails, then you have 3 generals to face the firing squad. Ayusin niya. Ang ano, they're there to just assist they do not take anything from Secretary Duque. So, tutulungan lang nilang yan. Pero itong pang vaccine, at what price, what is the brand, kay Galvez yan lahat. So, binigay ko yan sa kanya. Means to say that I trust him to get a good bargain for government. Pero sa ngayon, lahat ng vaccine naman talaga nagmamadali. But do not believe in that shit about America delivering kaagad. Hindi nga niya ma-deliver doon sa kanilang lugar, dito pa. Itong Amerikano talaga. Maniwala kayo. I've been with government, have dealt with them many times. And that's why I have naging cynic ako sa kanila. Kasi wala pa, pasigan na dyan. Kung ibigay, di ibigay. Wala man. Why if you want to help, if America wants to help, you deliver, stop talking. What we need is the vaccine, not your verbose speeches. Ang kanila lang kasi kay yung visiting forces agreement, matatapos na. Ngayon, pag hindi ako pumayag, aalis talaga sila. Kung hindi sila makadeliver ng baski na lang in minimum of mga 20 million vaccines, they better get out. No vaccine, no, stay here. Luko-luko talaga ito. Bigay ka, bigay. Wala na maraming ingay. So they are put on notice that if you cannot produce the vaccine, 20 million at least, immediately, ay mahirap ka nga dyan mismo in your own country. You choose Pfizer. Pfizer is up to its neck producing it for everybody. And then you promise so many countries of your vaccine. So, ulitin ko, it is only General Galvez, the hero of Marawi, kaya niya to. So, when is the earliest vaccine, General?
Sir, the Western based vaccine, sir, the earliest, sir, is May, sir. So we are already, we are already 85% of the contract for 20 million for the government and 10 million for the private sector. Then another US-based, India-based vaccine, we might be having our contract signed by January. Pfizer also by January, sir. And also Moderna, we just have a initial arrangement for 20 million doses. So all in all, sir, if we will get Novavax, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, J&J, and also Moderna, we might have more or less 80 million doses. And also recently, at the evening of 24, and also in the morning, the Gamaleya of Russia also negotiated for another 25 million. And for them, the efficacy of Gamaleya is 91.5% for the first dose, and the second dose is 95. So we are asking them to submit the clinical trial number 3, and we hope that if we will be having all this contract closed by January, the earliest, the earliest is if we will prove that Gamaleya is very safe and effective, they will produce it on February. On Sinovac, sir, we're still negotiating with the Sinovac Hong Kong, but for now, sir, Yusek Borge will make an arrangement again with the ambassador. So there is no there is no truth yung sa lumalabas na balita na we are focusing only on few vaccine. It is a portfolio. Basically, ang mauna, sir, is AstraZeneca, yung magiging contract natin. And next is a Novavax from Serum India. Next is Pfizer. And then maybe Johnson & Johnson's. We have also the discussion of the head of terms and also the supply agreement, and also with Moderna. And then followed by Gamaleya and also the Sinovac. So the contract that we will be having is basically, as I've said, from Novavax, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, J&J, Moderna, Sinovac, and Gamaleya.
Don't mind so much about the cost. The thing here is availability. Kung sino yung merong maibigay sa atin, never mind if it's costing kanila, sabi sila, ours is much expensive because it is more potent. Oh, sige, bilhin mo na lang. What's available there, bilhin mo because it's an emergency. Never mind about the costing. Wala na, hindi natin pinapag-usapan yan. Total, hindi makaagad bayad yan. Hindi, dahan-dahan lang bayad natin next year. Tapos, dalawang taon. Then you say that give us another 2 years because our economy is in shambles. So we have no money. Pero kunin mo na, tanggapin mo na. Pero huwag mo sabihin na wala kang pera.
Sir, Mr. President, sir, all doctors are here to allay some fears of the public. Sir, we will follow the ADB World Bank standards. We have 1.3 billion that has been allocated by World Bank and ADB for the stringent qualification of every vaccine that will come here. Sa ADB po, kailangan po na World Health, WHO accredited ang vaccine na papasok sa atin. Pangalawa, sir, is kailangan may stringent regulation coming from US, either US, UK, or other stringent countries. And then, yung World Bank po mas mataas. Either 2 or 3 SRAs. At saka kailangan po talaga dumaan po sa vaccine expert panel po natin. At saka po sa ating FDA. bago po natin makuha. So napaka-stringent po. Kaya po kami po na gusto nating i-announce sa ating mga kababayan na yung pinipili po natin na vaccine is very safe and effective considering that they will follow our stringent procedures. At the same time, they will follow the stringent procedures of our fund manager and yung tatawag nating procurement agent, which is the ADB and the World Bank and the EEIB. Yun po.
I'd like also to call the attention of Attorney Domingo sa FDA. Doktor? Doktor ka ba? Abogado ka. Nanay mo ang abogado. Ano yung doc? Yung ganito yan. If it is already, it has passed the scrutiny of countries like the United States and made available to its citizens, UK, huwag mo nang patagalin yung process para kung ano man ang magdating sa inyo, gusto mo ikaw muna magtusok sarili mo yun. Tapos, if nothing happens to you, then let it go in a jiffy.
Yes. Mr. President, pag naman po galing na sa stringent regulatory authority like the US FDA or UK, minimal na lang po yung additional requirements natin. Ano na lang po, stability sa Pilipinas, sa klima natin. And of course, some information lang po doon sa clinical trial nila na showing na yung efficacy niya in safety in an Asian population is also similar to the general ginamit po kasi nila usually mga puti. So meron naman pong mga 5% dyan usually na Asian at pag hiniwalay naman natin, nakita natin na pareho din yung efficacy and safety niya, okay na po sa atin yon. Tapos yun lang po, kailangan lang siguraduhin natin na yung niregister talaga nila sa Amerika halimbawa, yun din yung dadalhin nila dito sa atin. Baka po kasi mamaya ibang factory pala yung, o ibang paraan. So we just have to make sure that the product that is registered in the US, for example, is the same product that will be brought here. At yun lang pong mga konting local requirements lang po natin for stability dito po sa Pilipinas. Kailangan lang po mapakita na pag binyahe naman siya papunta rito, hindi nasisira po yung bakuna. Pero mabilis lamang po, basta po galing sa mga stringent na regulatory authority.
How about let me ask you, how about the Chinese? Yung nila?
We expect din po na mag-apply din sila probably by January because yung pong clinical trial phase 3 nila is wrapping up ngayong December at lalabas na daw po yung interim results nila. So once we have that, then we can have an evaluation. Yun nga lang po, medyo mas stricto lang po kasi wala pa pong pinanggalingang ibang FDA counterpart. But the vaccine expert panel po nila Dr. Montoya at sila Dr. Nina Gloriani, nangako na rin naman po natutulong din sa amin, sa yung pong mga tiga-DOST. So that we can evaluate, pwede rin naman po silang mag-apply.
Yung Sinopharm?
Yes sir, kasi may EUA na po sila sa China eh. So they allow it for use in their own country. So that gives us some confidence na yun naman pong safety profile niya ay maganda. Yun nga lang po, dadaan lang po sa expert panel natin.
I take it as a declaration of its potency. Yung declaration nila na it has passed the test because they gave it to almost 1 million of their soldiers.
Mataas din po yung early reports nila, more than 80% din po, parang 84% yung efficacy rate. Kaya lang, the final interim report is still not yet published, kaya hindi pa po namin na-access. At hinihintay din po namin para ibibigay naman daw po sa natin sa expert panel.
Kung mag-ano yan sa iyo, Sinopharmaceuticals, yun nga, sabi ko, it has passed the test sa kanila. Hindi naman yan sila mag-ano kung if it is deleterious to their citizens, they would not even attempt to inject one person. Pero marami na. At sabihin ko sa iyo, marami na ang nagpa-injection dito sa Sinopharm. At huwag kang tumingin sa akin kaya hindi kita kilala.
Wala nga po kaming mahuli, nakatatlong raid na po kami sa Makati tsaka sa Binondo, pero wala naman po kaming nahuli pa.
If it's Sinopharm, ano talaga totoo? Ito na lang ako ang may problema ngayon. For example lang, pwede ako magpabukuna uli pagdating ng Pfizer mo.
Yun, kasi po bagong-bago pa yung mga bakuna, wala pa po tayong experience no, doon sa paggamit po ng isang bakuna at ang ibang bakuna pa. Although I think our immunologists here and would say na posible naman po. No? Kaya lang masyado lang pong bago pa kasi tas iba-iba po yung platform, iba-ibang teknolohiya na hindi pa po siguro tayo ready paghalu-haluin.
Yun ang masakit yung ulo ng iba, hindi ako. Pero halos lahat ng sundalo na tusukan. I have to be frank and have to tell the truth. I will not voice a lie. Marami na nagpatusok and lahat. Up to now, wala akong narinig for the select few. Not all soldiers. Not all soldiers. Hindi pa kasi policy. If it is policy now to have them injected with, pero gusto ko mauna sila because I do not want a sickly armed forces and a sickly police. The reason why is that they have to be in good health all the time because they are responsible for the law and order of this country. At ito na marami tayong kalaban dito sa itong mga NPA. But kung tingin mo, may I ask you, kung ang NPA magpatusok sila, would you allow them?
Pag pumunta po kasi po sa Barangay Health Center, baka po hindi naman natin pwedeng i-turn away. Dahil yung pong ating mga doktor at saka yung mga nurse natin doon, sumumpa po sila no, na lahat gagamutin nila at lahat bibigyan nila ng serbisyo. So pupunta po siguro ng kusang loob sa health center natin, baka po kailangan bigyan din natin katulad po ng ibang mamamayan.
Bigyan mo tubig. Thank you. The vaccine is available to every Filipino citizen, including the communist NPAs, so that you can fight better and you are healthy, because I know that you will die. Pag hindi talaga kayo naghinto, mamamatay talaga kayo lahat. That's the gospel truth of it all. We will make available to you. We will not, in the name of humanity, we will not deny. Kasi ano yan Pero just to make you healthy so that you will die. Pag hindi kayo naghinto sa food, you stop. Kasi yung pera na kinukuha ninyo sa... Alam mo, let me just mag-segue ako. It's Christmas time. Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year kayong lahat. Pero ito ang tandaan ninyo. Itong mga sundalo na NPA, itong mga lumad, at itong misguided Filipinos for so many years now, you have been fighting almost siguro, meron dito a couple. When the child was born, both husband and wife left to join the NPA. Dito yung nagalit ako, sabi ko, because yung sabi ko, sana yung anak ninyo, katabi nila. Tapos, nakapag-aral na, I think, mag-sailor. Sabi ko nga, doon ka na sa Navy magpunta. Doon ako nagalit. Sabi ko, ipaano ko yung I was not joking. I was really Nagalit ako sa kita mo. Iniwan ninyo yung bata ngayon, matangkad pa sa kanila. Ang ano nito is yung pera na ginagamit ng mga leader ninyo ay dugo ng Pilipino yon. We cannot invite investors kasi sinusunog ninyo sa probinsya. Sinusunog ninyo yung mga backhoe, mga tractor. Million yan eh. And you deprive the Filipinos of good infrastructure. Kaya ang gawa. Hindi na magtuloy, magbaback out. Nobody is willing to take unless magbayad. Pero to tell you the truth, to tell the nation the truth, lahat bumibigay. Mga malls, mga lahat bumibigay. Alam ba ninyo yan, mga NPA? Lahat ng malls, ay hindi na ako I won't mention names. Lahat ng malls dito sa Maynila, nagbibigay ng taxation sa inyo. Lahat ng hotel. Kaya maraming pera. Pagka milyon-milyon. Look, saan nila pinapaaral yung anak nila? Sa Europe. Itong anak ni Sarate. And now he wants to talk to me if it is to the best interest of the people. It has nothing to do with the interest of the people. Attorney Sarate, Congressman Sarate. It is a question which I would like to ask you. Saan mo kinukuha yung pera na to finance the study of your son sa Europe? Tinignan ko yung lahat ng, I cannot read all. But nandito yung, sabi mo, sponsored by the Lula. The Lula does not even have income tax. Walang matanda na. So you were lying actually. And because the money that you finance, the study of your child, of your son, is taxation. Ang taxation, ito namang mga kayong mga loko-loko na you allow you na paggamit kayo ng mga tarantado itong mga leader ninyo. Sila milyon-milyon. Lahat ha, sabi ko lahat. Lahat ng mines companies. Lahat ng mga laging-laging dyan, naglalag over, nagbibigay yan. Milyon yan. Pero ang sa inyo, hanggang anong binibigay sa inyo? Medisina para sa eksena. Puro, at saka malaria. Lahat kayo may malaria na dyan. Tapos pasunod-sunod kayo. Totoo yan. Ako, nagsasabi ako, kaibigan man tayo noon. Kaya lang nung na-presidente ako, kalaban talaga tayo. Natural. Because mine now is the interest of the nation. Sinasabi ko lang, hinto na kayo. Mag-surrender na kayo kasi walang ginawa yung mga leader ninyo. It's plain banditry. There is no more ideological setup in their minds. Ang kanila na lang, mag-kill sa mga tao. You are not fighting anything anymore. Not even a religion, if you may. Wala. Pareho talaga kayo ng Abu Sayyaf. No different. Ako pa sa inyo mag-merge na lang. Totoo yan. Wala kayong ginawa kung hindi you want money to come to your hands through or by virtue of the blood and tears of other Filipinos. Sinisira ninyong bayan. We cannot, pareho tayo ng eroplano, nasakay tayo lahat, nagte-take off tayo, nandiyan na tayo sa runway, pero wala tayong lift. Hindi tayo umangat. Hanggang endless runway lang yan, yan ang Pilipinas. Dahil sa inyo. Mainly dahil sa inyo talaga. What disturbs the public order in the Philippines, kay kayo. Ang masakit dyan, hindi nyo alam na ang koleksyon ng mga ito sa mga nasa NDF, yung mga leader ninyo, pati si Season. Season, I forgot to paper. This is not kasi the proper time. Paano lang ako sabi ko, mag-segue lang ako. He traveled, is traveling around Europe. Punta-punta pa doon sa mga snow, mag-snow. We are on live. Mabuti, para masabi ko sa kanila, mga ulur sila. Ay, galit ako sa kanila. God, bring it to the people. Sumurinder na kayo. Ako, pag nag-surrender kayo, bahay. Meron mga kondo na ginagawa ko sa probinsya. Pag nag-surrender kayo, sabi ko na sa sundalo, para kanila yun eh. Sabi ko, bata, pasensya ka na, ibigay na lang natin dito para madali ang pacification campaign. Biglang ko kayo ng trabaho, sinisweldohan ko kayo. Yung test na nandyan, tinuturuan kayo maghanap buhay. Ang inyo, sige, hingi na pera doon sa mga tao. Ako pa sa inyo, ganito. Kung ayaw talaga ninyo, maghingi, mag-taxation kayo, hawakan ninyo yung pera. Pagdating ng mga NDF leaders, makipag-usap sa inyo about, wala, ideology natin. There's nothing to talk about. Siguro sine na panood ninyo. Ako pa sa inyo, i-hostage ninyo yung NDF, maghingi kayo ng ransom. Sabihin ninyo na ang pera, logi kami. Bigyan ninyo kami. Diyan, suportado ko kayo. I-ransom ninyo yung, i-kidnap ninyo. Hindi ako mag-ano. I will not lift a finger to help those idiots. Kaya, libre kayo sa ano? Libre kayo sa vaccine sa COVID. Sabihin ko kay General Galvez na lahat ng Pilipino, including you, kasi Pilipino kayo, hindi ito, hindi ito gastos ninyo. Gastos sa ibang tao, ibang Pilipino. Not you. Kayo, extortion ang ginagawa ninyo. Hindi ako ng tawad sa body for the outburst. Hindi ko mapigilan sarili ko eh. Because we arrive at this issue of whether they should be vaccinated. All Filipinos ang Abu Sayyaf, mag-report lang kayo sa military. Sila ang magbakuna sa inyo. So, meron pa ba? Is there any other thing that we should be hearing?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
can I just, sir, request, pakibalik lang yung recommendation and I'd like, sir, for your approval through a motion, perhaps, so that we
Okay.
can approve the recommendation. And if the recommendations might stand improvement, so be it. Can we look at the recommendations, Secretariat, just so we can close this thing?
Okay.
Sa recommendation lang po. Yan po. Number one, sir, is we recommend a strict mandatory quarantine for countries that report new variant. So travelers coming from countries or areas, Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, with confirmed new variant shall undergo mandatory completion of the 14-day quarantine regardless of the RT-PCR test results. And then number two, countries with local community transmission of new variant will consider travel restrictions only when transmission of new variant is at the community level. Perhaps the WHO can make a comment here as the source of the information where the community transmissions are happening and which countries for our guidance, Mr. President.
There are three recommendations, and I'd like to ask the body if there is any comment. Yes, Secretary Roque.
Mayor Sec Duque, what about extending the travel ban from the UK? Because it will expire on the 31st.
Again,
Yung extension po of the travel ban from the UK, dahil yung travel ban po natin is only until the 31st of December.
travel ban from here to UK.
Hindi po, from UK to here. Hanggang
Yes,
31 lang po.
As a matter of fact, I'm telling you, there is no way of knowing how this thing would evolve. It is evolving. It's a new strain. But how fast is the progression, wala pa tayong alam. So, the best way is really to play safe. You put a stop sa travel nila. That is good. Kasali naman siguro yan dyan.
Mayor, in addition, could I add a fourth one then? I propose a fourth one. An extension of the travel ban for all flights coming from the UK, including those who transited in the UK for another 2 weeks.
Okay. I accept that. It's good. So, it's amended accordingly. Anyway, meron bang mga nagsusulat dyan? Kayo sa likod? Sila? Mukhang udapir man yung mga babae dyan. Okay. Number one is amended to include the motion of Secretary Roque. Is there any objection? Any comment? How about the second countries to? Is there a modification that you'd want to, or is it complete by itself? I think it is complete by itself. So if there is no objection, no further comment, the recommendations are carried.
Mr. President, how about the face-to-face recall of the face-to-face educational use face-to-face, Mr. President?
Sinabi ko na,
Yes.
yung face-to-face ni Secretary Brunel, I'm sorry to disappoint her. Hindi ako pwedeng this variant because this variant attacks even young people. Itong COVID original, may mga pa itong yawa na ito, selective na. Yung COVID ito, it does not affect so much the young people. they seem to be not vulnerable. Pero itong strain ngayon, they say that it affects also the young people. So, yung face-to-face na klase, wala na yun. We'll just wait for the normal season of schooling. It's vacation, then June. Hopefully, June, baka mag-improve na at mabakunahan na unang mga bata, di okay na.
Mr. President, the Executive Director of the Philippine Council for Health Research and Development, ED Dr. Montoya, would like to manifest. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Secretary, and thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd just like to, if it's possible, because it seems to me that the genome sequencing was focused on people coming from the UK. We have to bear in mind that the mutations, as was already repeatedly mentioned by the medical experts, will not only happen from outside of the Philippines, but can also happen within the country, independent of what is happening outside of the country, by virtue of burden of disease, infection. So may I suggest that the genomic surveillance as part of the biosurveillance should be strengthened to include targeted sequencing in high-risk groups, for example, like clusters with increased cases, clusters with increased severity and deaths, because these are actually the indicators for probably new variants arising in the Philippine population. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Ganito yan eh. We are focused on people coming in from UK. But let us see what develops in the coming days. We will meet on the 28th. My take is that passengers or people coming in from countries badly hit, or there's really a full-blown contamination we will include, I think, everybody. Not everybody, but people who we believe come from places where the COVID-19 and the new variant is present and is rapidly contaminating people. On the 28th, hopefully, we will be meeting again and we can see what develops. We have to be very informed of the situation. It is, I said, evolving in Britain. It is a full-blown one. Dito naman sa iba is mayroon lang 1 or 2 or 3. So we will calibrate our response depending on the severity na tama nila. If they are hit severely and there's a spike now, we might consider everybody coming from. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. President, good evening po. We just like po to, una, I feel very heartened po continuously hearing the importance of surveillance. As someone from the Epidemiology Bureau, napakahalaga po talaga na ang surveillance, siya yung nakakahanap ng sakit. Pero ngayon na wala pa pong bakuna, ang importansya niya ay yung nabanggit niyo po na saan ang pagtaas at bakit po tumataas. At pag dumating po ang COVID vaccine, ang surveillance po magsasabi sa inyo kung effective po yung bakuna natin at nakaka-detect po siya ng mga adverse events para alam natin kailangan bang itigil ang pagbabakuna. Pero i-level up po natin siya. And I think that's what Dr. Jimmy is saying. The biosurveillance or genetic sequencing, hindi naman po kailangan lahat kasi una, it's really expensive and there should be targeted population. At ang una po natin ay yung mga galing UK. Ikalawa po, siguro sampling po ng mga hindi po galing UK, pero galing po sa ibang bansa. Kasi po, hindi natin alam baka yung Hong Kong, ngayon lang po kasi sila na-detect, pero we don't know. Baka makita na rin po sa ibang bansa yung mga bagong variant na to or iba pa pong variant. At yung nabanggit nga ni Dr. Jimmy, dito po targeted ang sampling natin. Sino yung may pagtaas, sino yung nagka-cluster, kesyo community po yan, workplace or jails, yun pong mga, kung may mga mataas na kaso ng severe disease or pagkamatay. At yung huli po, sir, ngayon ang dami na kasi nating kaso na hindi na natin alam saan galing So, hindi ko alam kung kuha siya sa trabaho, sa public transportation. Kailangan, siguro sampling ang term namin, hindi lahat, pero maliit na porsyento, para lang malaman natin saan kaya nanggagaling, sino yung sources of infection, at anong setting. Mahalaga po yun sa ekonomiya natin. Kung nakikita natin, ang source of infection pala matitrace ba ko sa workplace, then we know we need to do something sa workplace or sa jails po siya or sa healthcare facility. And that's something that the DOH, along with the other agencies, will prepare para alam natin ilan to at magkano po yung magagastos natin para po sa biosurveillance na ipapropose po natin. Thank you, Mr. President.
When you comment on it?
Yes, I support the manifestation of the EB representative, Dr. De Guzman. We should really strengthen, in general rather than in specific terms, the biosurveillance capacity and in particular the genomic sequencing capacity. Because as correctly pointed out, the mutation is not just limited to UK. It can happen everywhere, in fact. So it's best to really characterize these new strains because it will influence to a certain degree our pandemic response. So it is crucial that the biosurveillance capacity be ramped up, and that is why in the number 3 recommendation, which I think deserves an amendment, warrants an amendment, which is not just limiting it to travelers from UK, but really biosurveillance in as a whole, the capacity strengthening. Yun lang po, Mr. President.
Nawala sa isip ko Kasi pag uwi ko dyan sa bahay ko, dumating ako kanina, nagbakasyon man lahat. Cook, pati lahat. Ang naiman yung gwardiya lang. Walang luto nga. Problema pa sana kung magkain. Order na siguro ako ng Yes, actually tama yan. Just think about it, ponder, then we will know on the 28th whether we are taking that course correctly. Sino ba? Yes, ma'am. You want to?
I would like to acknowledge, Mr. President, with your permission, Dr. Sanya Carlos, head of the RITM.
Good evening.
Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
Proposed amendment, sir, for number 3. We wish to amend that only PCR positive samples be referred for sequencing because it is not useful just to send samples if they are not PCR positive. So it will waste a lot of resources. So proposed amendment is only PCR positive samples will be sent to either the Philippine Genome Center, the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, or the UP-NIH. This has been discussed among us earlier. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. President, we agree with I agree with the proposed amendment to specifically state that only positive PCR test results, equivalent swab be submitted for genomic sequencing.
So may the record show that he the proposed amendment is accepted and the original recommendation modified as such. Yes, Secretary Guevara.
Mr. President, I would just like to add a fourth recommendation. And well, based on our discussions earlier, one very significant thing that I noted was the observation that this new COVID-19 virus has not yet reached Philippine shores. So I guess that our main priority at this time is to ensure that this new virus strain will not enter Philippine territory. So with that, Mr. President, last December 15, you issued an executive order further strengthening our border controls through the adoption of the Advanced Passenger Information System. However, that has not yet been actually implemented because implementing rules and regulations have to be formulated within 16 days from effectivity by the Bureau of Immigration and other relevant government agencies. This system, Mr. President, will authorize the Bureau of Immigration to obtain advance information from various airlines and carriers about the origin of their individual passengers, their originating flight, their connecting flight, their transit flight, and so many other relevant information. This will serve not only to address security risks, but also health risks. So what I'm proposing, Mr. President, is that we implement this advanced passenger information system immediately, although the Bureau of Immigration and other relevant agencies have been given 60 days from effectivity to come up with implementing rules and regulations. May I suggest that in view of the urgency of the situation, that the period within which to come up with this IRR be shortened in view of the urgency of the situation. So as soon as the implementing rules and regulations are in place, Mr. President, we can immediately put this into operation, and health risks that may be associated with passengers coming from not only the UK, but also from other infected countries may be properly addressed even before the passenger boards the flight coming to the Philippines. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes. Well, that would add a burden to the people from whose country the plane is carrying the passengers. So, you want it shortened.
We just want, well, to direct, if you may, the Bureau of Immigration and the other implementing agencies to come up with the IRR as soon as possible so that we can address this problem immediately. Because we don't know if at any time, baka po may makalusot.
You have an ideal time there?
Well, we can probably shorten it to 20 to 30 days, Mr.
Well,
President.
we'll just go direct to an order. The Secretary of Executive Secretary would order, we pass on the order that they shorten it. In view of the emergency, the crisis.
Yes, Mr. President.
Ano pa ba? Hirap kasi yung makikita natin tapos wala na tayo. 28 pa naman. 26, 27, 28, okay pa. If I can have the pleasure of your presence, I promise you a better meal the next time. Kasi dito, sa totoo lang, dito sa there's only, I serve only rice, isang if you notice it, rice, ulam, pati sabaw. Pati si Ambassador, lahat ng kasi yung Secretary of State, ganun sabi ko na we do not serve steaks here because that's expensive. The people will complain. So ako, Jollibee lang siguro ngayon. Walang tao. I'm thinking of umiikot yung isip ko kung sino kaya ang mayaya kung kikinig pa naman yung initial right to. Madam, ano yan, yung sino mga lalaki na bawal naman ngayon pumasok doon sa ano. Really, there's nobody. There is nobody. The kitchen is empty because nag-uwi na. So hindi na sila makabalik agad because they have to undergo quarantine. So it's useless to call them. Yung mga babae, ganun rin nagsiuwian. Kaya ako lang pati yung nurse ko, ang dalawa kami. Sabi ko na sa kanya, okay, you treat me and I will treat you. Let us treat each other. Tayo na lang naiwan dito. So, is there any other thing that we should be talking about or take up? Anything that is not in consonance with good practices? Because kung wala na, then I like to remind you again, we will meet on the 28th. Nandito ba sila lahat? Yung mga desilistahan. So, before we end, I'd like to address myself to the people, to the nation, that we are indebted by the presence of the following persons who contribute a lot to what we have discussed and we to improve now. Si Dr. Marisa Alejandria, then we have Dr. Mark Edsel Ayes, then Dr. Celia Carlos, Dr. Altia Di Guzman, Dr. Rolando Enrique, Dr. Nina Gloriana, Dr. Teodoro Herbosa, Dr. Jaime Montoya, familiar name, Dr. Ana Lisa T. Ong Lim, Dr. Cynthia Palme Saloma, and Dr. Mario Panaligan. Mga kapatid kong Pilipino, ito yung mga tao na tumutulong sa akin, binasa ko. Huwag ninyo makalimutan, baka yung iba tatakbo ng senador. At least alam na ninyo kung sino yung mga pangalan. Ulitin ko ulit ito. But we have with us in this meeting Filipino doctors who are really concerned with the welfare of their countrymen. They are here to help us out because we are not medical persons. They contribute and we just listen and implement in more ways than one the recommendations. So maraming pasalamat ako sa kanila And to the kayong lahat mga Pilipino, wala pa namang bakuna kasi mayroon tayong pera, wala nang problema. We have the money, we can buy. Problem is of supply. Kaya maghintay tayo kasi yung una nila, the countries who manufactured the vaccines, see to it that ang nauna yung kanila bago tayo, which is natural. And that is natural of human being. Parang yung kadugo niya muna ang mauna, mga anak nila. So we'll just wait. Anyway, General Galvez is there. At huwag kayong maniwala dyan sa mga ano-ano na mga vaccine coming in. Wala yan. Ang tawag niyan, istorya lang yan. So, maraming salamat sa lahat ninyo, doctors, at magandang gabi sa inyo lahat.